Welcome to the First Texoma National Bank Podcast. Join us as we share stories and explore the journeys that have shaped First Texoma's roots in the Texoma community for more than 125 years. Hello everyone, my name is Mike DeLoro and I am your host today of the pilot episode of the First Texoma National Bank Podcast, joined today by a very special guest, our CEO, Mr. Art Stauffer. First of all, Art, welcome to the podcast. And how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
So as we get started, I think it's important for us to kind of get to know you a little bit. And maybe if you'd like to give us a brief synopsis of your banking history and your time here with First Texoma.
Okay. When I got started in the banking industry, it was the furthest thing from my mind. My dad was a bank president for 30 years. Did not think that's what I wanted to do. And as I was beginning to leave OSU, had started to be an ag teacher and interviewed with Cargill International and was going to be a commodities broker for them, buying and selling and hedging feed for livestock across the Southeast. And about that time, my hometown bank decided they needed to expand their portfolio out of the oil and gas industry and needed an ag lender. And I went in cold, started without a lending assistant, had triplicate documents in my desk, and could make a loan in about 15 minutes with a Selectric typewriter. And from that point on, put the first computer in our bank. We didn't have computers when I first started, and I was involved in installing the first computer. Left the banking industry after about 8 years. It was with John Deere Finance and in the ag equipment business, and a position opened here. The CEO reached out to me, and I've been here since January the 1st, 2001.
Wow,
so remember the date. Remember the date easy. Yeah.
Well, talk to us a little bit about this podcast. I know that now we're in a different age of technology and just information, but how important it is to be able to connect with our customers and just people within our community. And so if you'd like to shed a little light on this podcast and what we're trying to aim with it.
Sure. Well, it kind of came about, we have a member on our board that is in marketing. And we did a very successful commercial with one of our customers that kind of highlights the relationship between the two customers, how community banking is important, highlighted their business as much as ours. And the podcast is an easy way for our customers to listen through whatever medium, whether that's Spotify or Apple or YouTube or however they want to watch it. And thought, man, that was successful enough that we could bring in and highlight bank products, online banking, and highlight some other customers in that area without having to go into a full-blown production mode of that. Actually was close to a year in the making behind the scenes, and this would just be a more relevant way of being able to relate to our customers other than the print medium. Newspaper is still a great medium, of course, but you can just engage your customers one-on-one intellectually much more quickly and in-depth than you could in a newspaper article.
I think the other great thing about it, too, is just learning about the customers and the history behind their business and just the impact that they've had and maybe some of the things that maybe sometimes customers can learn or others in the community can learn about these businesses.
Absolutely. Just the fortitude, the ingenuity, seeking niches that are needed within the community that big chains can't provide. So learning from each other, it's as much educational as it is advertising or marketing based. So, yeah.
You know, one of the interesting things for those listeners that may not know, the history of the bank is just so plentiful, over 125 years of history. And, you know, that leads me to this, piece here is how do you think First Texoma has been able to withstand the test of time and just weather so many interesting pieces within our history here within the Texoma area?
125 years ago, people were just, for lack of a better word, gritty. And they were able to overcome so much, especially when you consider there was no technology. There was no internet to research. There was no AI to just type in a problem and get an instant answer. They had to dig in and figure it out. And one of the unique things about First Texoma is the members of our board and a lot of the employees and the customers are descendants of those people. And so those traits and those just overall human characteristics were passed down, not just from a business standpoint, but over the dinner table. And so that's just kind of carried on. That's just the backbone of who we are. We're just involved in the community from the top down, no matter what the title is. If the job needs done, nothing is above us.
Sure.
So the hard-working aspect of that is important. We kind of have an unofficial tagline. We were started when a handshake meant something, and today it still does. That's important in our overall culture. That's how we hire. That's how we evaluate people that we're bringing on board. And to some extent, that evaluates how we bring on customers into our family. So that's important to us.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, naturally, through all those years, there's a natural evolution that can take place, and as technology starts to creep into the industry, maybe if you could shed some light on that and just the evolution of the bank and how it's taken shape, to present day.
Technology is a tool. It's not a be-all, end-all. And I think one of the things that we have done is we have tried to bring on technology that will help us and help our customers and not just be trendy. We have looked at numerous, both internal and external technology tools, and if it's something that takes us to the next step, helps our customers be efficient in their business model, it's something we fully embrace. We're not a small town bank that pushes that back. But we also don't want to just bring on a bunch of bells and whistles to where a customer gets logged on. They have to go through a lot of different windows and sales techniques and different pop-ups and things like that to use that tool. We don't do it. We're not doing something just to be trendy. We want it to actually be helpful. So it kind of goes hand in hand with us as far as we want to be as efficient as possible, make the business aspect to our customers as efficient as possible, but we don't want that to get in the way as well.
Sure. And, obviously with being able to look at, what you had mentioned earlier about customer relationships and where a handshake still means something, I think that's something that, we're starting to see how maybe we're seeing less and less of that within the banking industry.
Sure.
But if you could maybe shed some light on how important that is, because there are quite a few members of our community that's how they prefer to do business. And
absolutely,
we want to try and give them that personal experience and that customer experience to it.
In thinking about that, when we started putting the marketing thing together not long ago, many of my customers, I'm their customer as well. So when they come in, I may ask them about a product that they're offering. So that's a true relationship. It's not just, hey, when I need a loan, I'm going to call Art and see what his rate is and things like that. They may come in, they may bring their product with them. I'll buy it while they're here, and they make the transaction as easy for me. In a small community, too, you're living with that person. And that's not that you're not in Dallas or you're in Houston. But when I leave the bank, I'm just as apt to see them at a ball game, at the hospital, at church, at the grocery store. And so having a positive relationship is just part of being a member of the community, no different than anywhere else. So
I think the spirit of First Texoma is so plentiful, and that's really what this podcast is about. But if you wouldn't mind sharing a customer or business that you think really embodies what the First Texoma spirit is about and just what we really are about.
And they wouldn't mind me saying this because we did feature a commercial on them, but the Vias family from Bryan Ag, I mentioned I started here January 1st, 2001. And the first week there was a manager at another location that was off, and the CEO at that time said, hey, would you mind just going out and managing the desk while he's gone until he gets back from vacation, and we'll bring you on board. And while you're there, here's a file I'd like for you to look at. I know you've got an ag background, and that was the Bryan Ag file. So I was familiar with them from day one. and I started working on their file and putting it together. And over the last year, I'm working with the third generation of the Vias family. So when I go down there, I may see Simon and Lavelle, who started the business, and now Lindsay and her husband Dustin are their grandkids. And of course, Daryl is there, and all three generations may be there at one time. And a lot like First Texoma, they have gone through a lot of transitions. Their business focus changed. They're an ag-based business. And when they started, they were full service. It was fertilizer. They were in the field. They were doing a lot of spraying. The peanut allotment went away, and so the peanut crops died down. They transitioned to a retail business, and now they are focusing on both being a retail and a wholesale business. And so they have kind of gone along, still being a very small town, community-based business, but have transformed and not just went with trends, but forecasted those trends and stayed ahead of those, and really have transitioned their business 3 different times in the time that I've dealt with them. So much like us, they're in the community all the time. They support the community. They do a lot of things behind the scenes that they do for no recognition, and it's not an advertising base. It's truly a heartfelt gesture, and that's how we feel about a lot of things. So they kind of epitomize the same thing that we do.
I think there's a natural progression too as a banker. It's important to see the successes of your customer, because their success is the bank's success.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's something that is unique in that you've seen that evolution in their business and how they've grown, and just how First Texoma has been along the way to help them, across their hurdles and some of their challenges that they've may faced.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think makes community banking different, because, of course, there's lots of options for customers,
Sure.
and many of which are listening today. But if you could maybe touch on why that matters and why that's important, especially if maybe it is a small business that's looking to get their feet wet with what they're trying to do, and how important a bank, and more specifically a community bank such as ours, can be an impact in their career.
There's 2 things that really jump out to me on that question. The first one, during the real estate crisis of 2000, we'll say 10, Bank of America and some other large banks, I won't just single Bank of America out, that was unfair, but there was a process called robo-foreclosure. And anytime a customer got 30, 45 days past due, they kind of automatically went into foreclosure. Very hard to stop, because it was a major corporation, tens of thousands of employees, and finding someone to say, hey, I'm not past due, or why is this foreclosure going on, or here's what's going on, I just need 30 days. There was a lot of people across the country that lost their homes because of that. And I can say I had at least 10 to 15 people that weren't past due at all, but had seen the headlines and read the news and walked into my office and said, is that going to happen to me? And I said, no. If you've got a problem, we're here. Just walk in. You don't need an appointment. You never do. Just come in. We can talk through the problem and remember the community. We can work it out. The other one is, like you said, a new customer may come in, and we may be privy to some information if they're wanting to start a new business that they're not aware of, or they have some pitfalls ahead of them that they're not aware of. And we can kind of talk through that and sit down and say, hey, here's some bullet points. Go home and think about this and look at those and see how you would answer it. And let's reconvene in about a week and talk about those. And they may have some good answers, or maybe some things they haven't thought of. So sometimes not doing business with somebody at that point in time may really help them in the future, maybe a year or 2 years down the road, to kind of say, hey, let's restructure this a little bit and get a good foundation. And instead of being a 12-month business, that can be a generational business for them.
Sure. This next piece is, at times it can be difficult to project and look ahead, but if you were to perhaps look at the next 25 to 50 years with First Texoma, where would you see First Texoma?
That's a hard question to answer. I would say very close to where we are now as far as our overall impact on the community, our overall outlook as far as remaining a community bank. Obviously, in the last 125 years, we've had opportunities to expand. We've had opportunities to sell. We've had opportunities to merge. And that is not what the families that are involved with First Texoma have interest in doing. There's a long heritage here. Very proud moment when the OCC, which is our regulator, at our last exam recognized us for being 125 years. In fact, we had our original charter, and it said First National Bank of Durant, Indian Territory, not Oklahoma. And so we're only one of 3 or 4 banks that have been recognized by the OCC for that longevity. But that being said, if you'd asked me 25 years ago, would I think we would be one of the leading technology-based small banks in our area? We have a fantastic online banking product. We have one of the best risk management divisions for a bank our size in the United States. 25 years ago, those did not exist. So the long answer to your question is we will meet the hurdles that we met over the last 25 years with the same openness and the same open table idea generating to meet those hurdles that we have and remain true to our roots.
You know, one of the things that impressed me when I first came to work here at First Texoma was just the strategy within senior management, and more specifically how agile the bank has been and how well capitalized the bank has remained. And that security is important for all customers. And for those that may not know much about First Texoma, if you could touch on maybe that strategy within senior management and how you guys have been able to create and put First Texoma in a much more agile and athletic position.
You know, I learned a long time ago, I use sports analogies too much, but most successful head coaches will tell you that their success is they're hiring people as smarter than they are around the table. And while I'm the CEO and the buck stops with me, our senior management team is put together of a group of very smart people in their individual areas, but they're also very down to earth. No one really takes offense, and we've created an environment in our senior management team where dissension's not just okay. It's, I guess, for lack of a better word, encouraged. If we have an idea, we take all kinds of different ideas and angles from it as to how that would impact our employees, how that would impact our customers, how that would impact the bank, and we go with that. It's typically a very well-discussed, thought-out process. The other part of that is the board of directors is ultimately the boss, and they have given us that freedom to work within those decisions. And until I think we prove that we've not done a successful job at that, and we've not been profitable, and we've not been had the best ideas of our shareholders at the forefront, they'll continue to let us do that. And so that we're very blessed by that idea. I had a conversation with a customer today. I won't give their name, but we had a large loan on the table, and we cut the loan request in half. And this customer said, the reason I'm doing that is I want to keep my available credit open because First Texoma is so quick and so able to make a decision for us. I don't want to lose that availability. And while we kind of lost a little bit of loan generating income there, of course, I really took that as a compliment. Really kind of made my day for him to say that, because he's a very astute business person. And for him to say, I want to be able to rely on you if we need something immediate, that I know I can pick up the phone and that's available, and I can talk to you immediately and get that decision made for us.
You know, one of the other pieces that I think really differentiates First Texoma is, as you mentioned, our employees. But, you know, even on the front lines, delivering that customer experience is something that's vital, whether it's on the phone or in person in our lobbies. You know, if you could touch a little bit on that philosophy and how First Texoma has really differentiated themselves and created some separation with other competitors.
One of the things as we've interviewed not just frontline people, but interviewed loan officers, over the last 10 years, you'll ask, why are you leaving? And less than 10% of it is monetary. They'll say, I'm tired of the sales culture. We interviewed a loan officer that was at a larger bank, and he said, if I'm at the back, I've heard frontline people, while they have a customer, even in the drive-through, go through their checking account and say, hey, I see you've got a loan with GMAC, it's now Ally. Would you want to come talk to a loan officer? And sure, that's a great one-time sales touch opportunity. We really believe, and I believe this more, I've tried to instill this, and this is critical to me as a manager. When someone comes in for a loan, they're either really excited for something or they need something immediate. And I'll take a young couple that's coming in for a home loan. Their head is already spinning. They're looking at disclosures, they're looking at closing costs, they're looking at points, they're looking at a 5-page application, and they just need somebody to kind of walk them through that. They don't need someone trying to sell them a retirement plan at that very moment when they're just trying to get into their first house. They don't need someone trying to sell them a checking account or a savings account. They need someone to say, this is what we're going to do today. I know there's a lot here. We're going to walk you through that. I'll call you when your appraisal's ready. I'll call you when your title work's ready. I'll be at your closing and we'll go through this. And that's it. We want them to be so satisfied with that sales experience that when they have a need, they'll say, Mike took care of me. I'm going to go back and talk to Mike because I trust him.
Absolutely.
And that's the philosophy. There's no secret formula. There's no, hey, behind the scenes, we're going to get these points and Mike's going to get extra commission or anything like that. Doesn't exist. We want there to be a 100% satisfaction, and you'll come back to us because you enjoy doing business with us.
Absolutely. Well, through your long banking career and of course, Citizen here, being from Oklahoma, I know that there's always, and there may be opportunities where you've encountered a pearl of wisdom. I think something that's really stuck with you that throughout your career that maybe you could share for all those listeners out there that might gain some insight, with yourself personally and maybe with the bank as well. If you have a pearl of wisdom for us.
If you tell somebody you're going to do something, you do it. And that sounds cliche and old school, but that's it. That's the philosophy of our banking. I am not by nature an extrovert, and so that's kind of unusual for a loan officer. I would say I get 80% of my business from referral, and that will come with, if customer A calls me and leaves me a message, I'm going to call him back. It's not they have to call me 3 or 4 times, because if they're making 3 phone calls to call me, they could make 3 phone calls and call 2 different bankers besides myself. And so I just always put myself in their position. I know if I've called, let's say my car's in the shop, and I take it down there at 8, and they'll say, hey, we'll call you at noon. It gets to be 2. I start to get antsy. I put myself in that customer's shoes. So if I know their loan is let's say there's some title work and title office hadn't got back to me, I'll call them and say, hey, I hadn't forgot about you. Just letting you know where we're at. Just staying in contact and putting yourself in the customer's shoes.
No, I think that's a great point. And even, throughout the life cycle of the loan, even once a customer pays us off, I think, I know that's one piece that I know we've discussed before as loan officers, but just, with all of our employees here, how important it is to thank the customer.
Absolutely.
And especially, maybe a handwritten note.
Absolutely.
And if you can touch on that, just how that's, I feel again in the roots of what we do and how important that is, just that small gesture.
Yeah. My grandparents, they were, simple people, but they were very big on being courteous and being thoughtful. And I can remember during the course of my life, it was, as I was a kid, I would get thank you notes, I would get encouragement notes, and they would be handwritten notes. still have a lot of those, and did the same thing with both my daughters growing up, and they're both out of the house now, and they both have those boxes of those notes. And just knowing how that impacts people, and rather than, I'll typically send an email and say thank you, but I will send a handwritten note, and it's a internal joke here. My handwriting can be a little bit ineligible sometimes, but a handwritten note to say, hey, Art took the time to say thank you, and I think that's really important. It just means more. They really took the time to do it. It wasn't a computer-generated item.
Absolutely. Well, I think that kind of touches to how important it is for us. We're thinking about the customer almost through every facet of what we do.
Absolutely.
And whether it's a phone call, whether they're coming in person, and just like you had mentioned earlier, that handshake where that really still continues to mean something. So here in closing, is there any other pieces here, Art, on just anything else you'd like for our listeners to know, just in closing, about the podcast and kind of what they can expect going forward, and how we want to try and create this opportunity for them to learn more about the bank, and more importantly our customers and some of the people that are moving and shaking here in the Texoma area?
Yeah, we will bring on customers that kind of highlight what I've talked about, that have built a business that's based on integrity, that's based on their own hard work, things that they have learned throughout the course of it. They're comfortable, obviously, in talking about their own business and how the relationship builds with First Texoma. Also a way, other than maybe Facebook or social media or things like that we can get out new products that we're promoting, some things that are going on, like with our online banking and things like that. And let's say, like right now, we're in a really uncertain economic time. We might have a flash podcast or something like that where we come up and say, hey, we see this coming down the pipe from the Federal Reserve or a regulatory agency or something like that really could impact. I brought up the 2010 real estate housing crisis and the Dodd-Frank Act that came out of that, and that really impacts real estate lending to this day. And so maybe just bring on, have a question and answer period, and maybe answer some questions like that, and just get some information out for rumors and things that are going out to the general population, and just say, hey, this is where we are as a bank and what we see coming from that. So this podcast really could become the future Facebook page of First Texoma.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you coming on here, Art.
It's my pleasure.
And everybody for listening in.
Yeah.
Be sure and like and share the podcast with all your friends. We'd love to have more listeners. And also, there'll be a section here where you can submit your question, and that may be a great opportunity for us to be able to dialogue with some of our listeners. So
Absolutely.
Be on the lookout. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we're looking forward to kicking off the First Texoma Podcast here, officially our pilot episode, and we look forward to you joining us on our next one. My name again is Mike DeLauro, and we appreciate y'all's support in advance, and we look forward to the next episode. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mike.